Continuing with the question, is there a magical war going on in the world? And if so, would it explain things that are happening in the world and happening in your life? Coming up right after this.
That's unexpected. I must say, you fight well.
Now put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Good afternoon, this is Lucky Lynx. Okay, so those of you who've been tuning into this conversation that I've been posing in the last few videos about the question, is there a magical war going on in the world? And I encourage you guys to take a look at those other videos. I've even made a playlist of those videos so that you guys can watch it. I'll link the playlist at the end of this video. But I'm about to hit on some really important things, I think, right now, and some really big things. And I'm very grateful to those of you who have joined in the conversation, because you guys have been saying some amazing things. You've had some incredible insights, and you've had some incredible experiences. And I really encourage you guys to continue to share, and I'm very grateful for those of you who have shared. You've actually opened my eyes to some other aspects of this that I hadn't considered either. And in these particular videos, I'm asking questions that I think sometimes people find questions uncomfortable. Let me put it that way. I think that this is going to be a long video because I've got a lot to say now. When I met my partner, his father was dying of ALS. And we spent a lot of time in the hospital towards the end of his days. And he couldn't move. He could not move his legs. He could not move his arms. He could only speak. And he was very frustrated at that time. And he confessed a lot during that time when he was struggling and when he was near death. And it was the first time I was meeting him. I was meeting him right when he was in that state. And he and I spoke quite a bit. And there was a moment where he got very frustrated and very angry with me. Because he was feeling that there had been a lot of things in his life that he hadn't considered. And he lashed out at me one day and he said, I didn't ask the questions that you asked when I was younger. I didn't do what you did. I didn't ask those questions. And there was a great deal of regret surrounding that outburst. And I just sort of nodded, and I looked at him and I nodded, and I could appreciate the fact that he was frustrated and that he was regretting the fact that he had asked those questions. These are not easy questions to ask. Where do I come from? What's going on in the world? Why are we here? I watched my parents' philosophy and the philosophy of the adults in the neighborhood that I grew up in, that Chicago neighborhood that I grew up in. And I've said this before. I've seen a lot of people. I looked at a lot of people that weren't happy. They weren't happy with their experiences. They weren't happy with their relationships. They weren't happy with their careers. And it made me wonder why adults did that. All my life, I've asked questions that people have tried to stop me from asking. And all my life, I've had people sort of laugh at me for asking those questions. I cannot tell you how many friends that I had, how many people I dated who criticized me for the questions that I was asking. When I was in my 20s, my friends used to look at me and laugh and say, "You poor dumb thing." And they would look down on me for the questions that I were asking. They would go along and they were, in their jobs and doing the stuff that they were doing. And I was like, well, don't you want more? Isn't there more? What about magic? And I cannot tell you how many times someone told me to grow up, that I was delusional, and that I really just needed to wake up. Now, I watched a whole lot of people stumbling through their lives, hating their lives, very angry about what their lives were, frustrated by their relationships, frustrated by their experiences, and they were telling me to wake up. I look back on those people now, and quite a few of them are either dead, or the very system that they were embracing, the very ideas, the very philosophies that they were telling me I needed to wake up and realize as the way it was, because they would say, that's just the way it is. That's the way life is. I never liked it when people said that's the way life is. There's this wonderful line in Contact where the Jodie Foster character says, "That's funny. I always thought life was the what we made it." those people now who always said that's the way life is, they've been used up and spit out by the very philosophies and beliefs that they went around saying, well, that's the way it is. You got to accept it. No, you don't have to accept it. That's the first piece. So I wanted to say that first because I wanted to get that out there. There's another thing that's coming with all of this is that people are asking me the question, well, what do we do if there is magic going on? And I'm going to tell you, there is magic going on. And for those of you, I'd like to congratulate those of you who took a foray into this. And most of us, myself included, entered through the New Age stuff, New Age beliefs. I remember the Monthly Aspectarian was a free magazine back in Chicago when I was going through college, and when I was in high school, actually going through college, and I used to flip through it, and they post some very interesting ideas in some of the articles. I was like, well, what if we're energy? What happens if we are energy? What if there is magic? What if we actually don't have to live in a life filled with guilt and suffering? And what if there's more? These were the questions I was really hungry for. And most of us sort of kind of got in that way. And some of us were raised that way in asking those questions, but some of us weren't, and we had to sort of fight against it, and it probably made us search all the harder. But the thing is, for those of you who have actually faced it, gone into it, and started exploring magic, started exploring things like the tarot, started doing something, no matter what it is. I don't really care what it is. I mean, even if it is, The Secret or whatever it is, good for you for exploring it, and good for you for taking the risk, because at least you're doing something, and you're not one of those people who sat around going, well, that's just the way it is, and try to crush other people for trying to ask bigger questions. So I'd like to congratulate all of you who have walked into the world of magic, who've explored the world of magic, who've experimented with magic. It seems to me that there are, in those philosophies I've been discussing in these last few videos, these philosophies that limit people, a great many of the philosophies, religions out there right now discourage the use of magic, and they discourage magic, and I want to know why. Because it seems to me that in all the old stories, and all the old fairy tales, and all the old folk tales, and all the old myths, magic is always what made huge contributions to humanity and made things happen in the world. And I'm even talking about magic as a technology as well. If magic is a technology, and what we know of as a technology, well, maybe there's a bridge between the two that no one's acknowledging. And maybe that's what they're really afraid of, that somehow between technology, medicine, and magic, there is something actually that could really liberate us. Now, this is really dangerous stuff to start asking about, because when you start asking about this stuff, people get uncomfortable. They want to shut you down. They want to tell you no. They want to tell you you're deluded. I don't like scientists who discard the idea of magic, because science is supposed to be the realm in which you ask questions and you ask possibilities. What if? And if they say, well, that's not possible, it's like, well, then you're not really a scientist. You're not really asking the questions, what if? What if there's something else? There are things that quite a few different magical traditions have proven and shown to scientists, and they just completely disregard it. They get uncomfortable, they won't talk about it. There are several... Actually, I'm going to leave that at that. I would like to continue then and say, well, what if they're discouraging us from exploring magic, because in magic there is some real power. There is something really that will set us free. There is something that will really let us understand what we really are. The one thing that a lot of you have been noticing in the questions that I've been asking in the last few videos is that there are a great many systems out there, and I include in that academia, school, and other things, not just religion. They don't want us to have power. Now, I find this very interesting. When I was a student and when I was a teacher in colleges, in the writing programs, I found it very interesting that whenever there was a story about magic, they didn't particularly like it in those writing programs in academia, they seem to like stories about people who were stuck, people who were depressed, people who were cheating on each other. You read The Rocking Horse Winner by D.H. Lawrence, well, that was a marginal story. Or you read something by Ray Bradbury, well, that was a marginal story. You read something that had magic in it, well, they were marginal authors, they would call them. But you read something about someone who was trapped, enslaved, brutalized, raped, and they would say, oh, this is just such a great piece of work. Magic was looked down upon. Suffering was extolled. Sounds a lot like religion, doesn't it? So people have asked me, well, what do we do? And this is the big point. You make a decision. You make a decision that you no longer want to support the very philosophies that are keeping you from your own power. Once you recognize that something is keeping you from your own power, then your decision to keep feeding it, well, that's your decision. It's no longer a case of, well, I can't, well, it's hard, well, everything's stacked against me. No, now you know what's going on with the game, and you're choosing to make the other players the winner. See, that's the part that people don't like to hear. Because people always want me to tell them quickly, well, give me a little tip, tell me something, show me something. And when it comes to divination, I can show you all sorts of things, all sorts of tips, all sorts of ways to read these in ways that unlock answers and help you ask better questions. For one thing, I think, the one thing that I think limits people most in divination is they don't know how to ask the real questions. They're assuming that the oracle is going to tell them everything they need to know, and that's not really how a sage works. And if you've got a being in the deck that's a real sage, that has real wisdom, they're going to wait for you to ask the question without just spilling all the answers. And in this is the secret. What have you done to earn the answers? Because people who ask really good questions, people who want to search deeper, they search within themselves. They do very scary things. It takes a lot of courage, it takes a lot of bravery, and it takes a lot of work to be able to ask the right questions. Once you've learned how to ask the right question, you've probably earned, at least somewhat, a right to at least start to get some answer that leads you to the next question. But what people ask a lot, and I'm not saying this is everyone, because a lot of you out there are asking some really good questions, and you're saying, hey, wait, I want to ask what I'm doing as part of this that's keeping me down. And I really applaud you guys, because you guys are taking some very brave steps, and good for you. But for those who say, well, I don't really want to get involved with anyone, I don't want to do anything, I just want to read it in a book, how to protect myself, how to do this, how to do that, how to do that. Within 5 minutes, while I have free time from supporting the system, the job, the academia, the religion that's weighing down on me, crushing me, and killing me, I don't really want to take the big risk to get out and ask the real questions and actually ask myself how to liberate myself. Here's the thing that you guys aren't understanding. When someone writes it down in a book and puts it out there for everyone to see, it's very easy for someone to snatch up the information, steal it, and hoard it for themselves. That's first. Second, they can take the information, bastardize it, and turn it into something that doesn't work so that they can own it. Happens all the time. So they see something, they like it, they think, oh, that's so good, but I want it to be mine, so I'm going to bastardize it, trademark it, and put it out there. And now they've taken the very thing that made the teaching effective so that they could sell it to everyone and own it themselves, which is happening with a lot of bestsellers out there. In those traditions where the real information, the real secrets were handed down orally from master and student, there was a transmission directly through the lineage. And usually, the majority of what the master taught the student isn't even said. It's the other magical, spooky stuff that the master isn't able to impart to the student. We think in this day of Google that if I can't put it and look it up on Wikipedia, then it doesn't exist. That is a huge trap. And that is the ignorance blade that I spoke of in the Wheel of Life video. That's us believing, and our pride blade believing that we can just Google the answer and then we got it. Now we're a master ourselves. Now we know it all. The question I want to ask you is, do you want to address these questions seriously? In which case you have to go deep inside of you and start to ask yourself, what's going on in my life? And how do I find the kind of information, teachings, and training that allow me to be able to defend myself against this if this is really going on? Or is it just something that I find spooky and I want to spend 5 minutes on and then go back to supporting the very system, the very ideas, the very philosophies, the very structures? They're actually holding me down and taking my power from me. No one can make that decision but you. And I respect whichever decision you choose to make because that's your free will. But for those of us who faced in our life people looking at us and laughing and rolling their eyes, saying, "You poor dumb thing," because we wanted to ask the questions. Well, these videos are especially for you guys, because you guys are the ones who are willing to ask the questions that are going to take you much deeper than those people who rolled their eyes are ever going to be able to ask in their life. And they may, at some point in their life, look back on it and lash out and say, well, I never asked those questions. And at that point, there's only one thing that you can say to those people. Whose fault was that? I am Lucky Lynx, as always, wishing you success and good fortune in all that you do. If you would like to learn how to read the tarot, I have a couple of classes. I have a beginning class. I take a storyteller's perspective, and I have an intermediate to advanced class. I have a class in how to read playing cards. I have a class in how to read the crystal ball. I have a class in how to read Mexican Loteria, which is an awful lot of fun. And did I say Lenormand? I have a basic Lenormand, a Grand Tableau Lenormand. I think that's all of them. That's 7. And if you guys would like to get a reading from me, if you'd like to schedule a reading, I have some openings at the beginning of next week. I think I might have 1 or 2 openings at the end of this week. But I have some openings at the beginning of next week. 779-302-8009 or conjurehope@gmail.com if you want to schedule a reading, or if you want to talk about how to register for one of my virtual classes. Hey, for those of you who have donated, I really appreciate you guys. And if you like these videos and you want to donate to help keep them coming, hey, I'm going to put my PayPal, my Venmo in the thing below. Like these videos, please. Share these videos, please. Subscribe. Share them everywhere you can so we can start to get people to talk about this subject. And put that little bell so you get the... Click on the bell so you get the notifications when the new videos come out. Because I've been doing them pretty much every day or close to every day. So, this video is really about claiming your power. And what do you do when you find that someone, something, or some situation is claiming your power and taking it from you? Well, you start to ask bigger questions. And then once you start to find the answers, you start to act on them.